Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am back with part 2. I am filming with a vengeance, trying to get caught up. This is the Simon Says Halloween limited edition card kit. It is not part of the subscription. It is something that you do have to purchase separately. And unfortunately, it is sold out by the time I did this editing. So I grabbed a piece of Bristol vellum cardstock. I used the Canson XL version. And I'm using my anti-static tool because I'm going to heat emboss. So I grabbed the ink stamp from the stamp set included in the kit, and it's a solid stamp and it's engraved with the word EEK. So I'm using that, and I'm going to create a pattern background using this stamp and then the bat stamp as part of this. As part of that stamp set. I apologize. It is really early in the morning, and I probably should not be doing a voiceover at this time, but we're going to keep going. So you can see as I'm stamping, I'm putting on my clear fine detail embossing powder. This is from Michael's, my local craft store, Recollections brand, and I think it really does a good job. I always wait till they have a sale where you can buy one, get one free. It's a huge sale. So once I have all of this stamped, covered in my embossing powder, of course I'm going to heat set this. So the bats, of course, are solid. And then we've got this EEK that's coming out. I am grabbing 3 of my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. And I'm using orange, light violet, and light green. I will have them listed below. And I'm just putting color within the letters of the EEK and at the bottom. Because what I want to do is I'm going to grab my aqua brush and I'm going to pull that color up. So it's going to have a variegated look to it. It's going to be darker at the bottom and, of course, lighter at the top. And I'm going to do that throughout this background using those 3 colors sporadically throughout. So doing the same thing with the orange. And then pulling that up with my aqua brush. Now, you do not have to use an aqua brush. You could use a small container of water and a small brush. It'll work the same. This is just something that I had closest to me. So you can see I did the green, the orange, and the purple. Spread them around. And now I'm going to take those same colors and I'm going to outline the bats. I thought it needed something. So it doesn't have to be an exact line. Again, there's no skill here. Just draw around it. And now I'm going to pull it out with the water. So as I dip in around the bat, I'm just going to pull it till it goes into nothing so that it almost basically runs clear. If I have too much ink at saturation that's close to the bat, I'll actually pull, clean off my brush and pull more, so that it can fade. The green was really, really strong when it comes to these brushes. So you can see I'm really pulling it out and it just keeps going. And it's like the Energizer Bunny. It just kept going and going. So you'll see I'm cleaning my marker off or my aqua brush off just a little bit more so that I can get to that clear saturation around it. I just wanted it to be a shadow. Didn't want it to have a definite line. And that's what the background looks like. It's different. I was having fun with it. So I'm going to grab my Favorite Things Wonky Stitch Rectangle die. It's either that or Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to grab a black card base. It's cut 4.5, 5.5 top folding. So if you're cutting that, it's, of course, 4.25 by 11, and then it's scored at 5.5. Put some foam tape on the back of this panel, and then propped it up there. And now I'm using glitter drops, my Nuvo enamel drops. That green that you saw is a Studio G. It's in the dollar bins at AC Moore, and they're touch and go. The black one that I have is pretty decent. I had used that in part 1. And this one, this lime green, it seems to be holding up really well as well. I'm also using my orange Nouveau, and that's ripened pumpkin. I'm using my purple crystal drops, that's crushed grape. The lime, did not use my lime green, I only did the glitter. And then I also used the lavender stickles. And that would be card 6. On to card 7, as I catch up here. You can see I pulled out an embossing folder by Tim Holtz. Who doesn't love Tim Holtz, especially for Halloween? So I will be using that. I grabbed the house stamp finally from the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that 3 times. This is, again, a piece of Bristol vellum. And you can see my first stamp was not perfect. That's okay. I'm still going to use this house. There's actually a reason why I'm stamping it 3 times. When you look at your stamps, look beyond them. And sometimes that's tough. It was something that I had to get used to. Okay, so I thought we're embossing this, of course, because I used my VersaFine Black Onyx ink. And we're going to heat set that. But look beyond them. You can cut into the stamp. I know we don't like to. I do that mainly for sentiments. I will cut my sentiments. So with the, okay, back to what the screen is. So took a piece of Neenah Solar 80 pound. I put it through the with the embossing folder through my Big Shot. And now I have this really cool web. I have ink all over my hands. It was the inevitable. There was so much that I was doing today, so I apologize the way that they look, but thank God for the Mono Tombow sand eraser. It actually worked. So I'm grabbing my Zig markers again. Same green as before, the orange, the light violet. This is the light green. I also grabbed the yellow, a darker violet, scarlet red, and dark gray. Again, these will all be listed down below in the description. So we're just going to watercolor these houses. I showed a couple of the colors. I didn't show everything on this because it's pretty much the same. If anybody would like to see a video just detailing on this type of thing, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to create one. So you can see how I colored them. I'm going to heat set this because there's a lot of water that's sitting on there, and now I'm going to cut. So even though I stamped the whole house, I'm going to get 3 different looks from this one stamp just by cutting it. So I've got the bottom portion, the main one that was stamped, and then the top without the stack up above. So those are my 3 little houses that I'm going to create a little haunted village. I grabbed one of my Spellbinder dies with the jagged edges because I'm going to be creating a window. So I just wanted to position my pieces to make sure. I grabbed a piece of black cardstock. I ran it through the bottom part of my wonky stitch die. And of course, I got a tear paper. I love tearing paper. And then that's going to be like my hillside or my street for my little tiny village here. Before we adhere it, I wanted to make sure that I cut out my window. Yes, we are going to be making a shaker card. So we're going to put foam tape all around the back along with my clear acetate in place. We lost footage during this wonderful video, so sorry about that. But I'm also going to mark the opening, because again, before I put the acetate in, I didn't make those marks. So I'm just holding it up, sliding it away with my pencil still there, and making that mark. I'm using the Sentiment Boo from the stamp set. And I have this green, this lime green golden shimmer embossing powder. And it's actually by Cosmic Shimmer. This is absolutely gorgeous. It doesn't glow in the dark. It looks like it does, but you can see that gold shimmer there? That stays after. And there's little tiny, it's a very fine fleck that actually sits within the lime green. It has become my new favorite embossing powder for Halloween. Bought that at Simon Says. Again, we'll link below. So now I'm just adding some sequins, some seed beads, iridescent dark seed beads. Of course, since I went right onto the card base, yeah, it's all over the place because I can't do it the other way that people do it. I have to bring my top down to the card base. So it's one of my things. So I was able to get that in place, working it, shaking it so that everything starts moving freely. I know you can use your anti-static around the edges so things don't stick, but I always seem to have a film. Anyway, so glued down my base. You can see that I had a little bit of the edge showing. Grab an alcohol marker, it can fix. There's no need to rip anything up. I just used that along the edge and you can't tell. I also went around my watercolored houses with my alcohol marker so that they would stand out just a little bit more and you didn't see the whites around the side. I adhered them in place, and I'm using my Spectrum Noir glitter pen in Moonlight for the windows and setting that in place. I thought it was really cute. I think it's great, you know, again, just look beyond your stamps, especially something like this. You can cut them to create your different shapes and get unique looks. So that's card 7. Let's move on to card 8. Card 8 is pretty simple. We're going to use the Lawn Fawn Stitch Rectangle die, and I'm using this spider web die. And I actually found it, I live at my local Michael's, and it's one of their recollection stamp sets. And all of that, those dies and those stamps, and this very large die for the web was only $4.99 plus 40% off. So if you have a Michael's near you, check it out. They are putting those items on sale. So I took that in black cardstock, of course, set it on my card base, because I was sitting here gabbing, sorry. And I marked where I wanted to stamp because I wanted to use the spider dropping down from this spider web so that when I put this in place, just leaving a white border so that you can still see the stitch marks, it looks like he's actually attached to his spider web, or hers, whichever. So I'm going to be using my Simon Says stamp black, intense black ink, because I'm going to be using my alcohol markers this time. I am not an alcohol colorist. I do not do phenomenal things. I'm still learning, so bear with me. But I am going to use, and again, my collection of alcohol markers are the Prismacolor brush set. I think they're really great. I'm using a neutral gray, and the first one I used, they say it's at 70%. This one that I'm using now for the next layer of shading is at 50%, or excuse me, the first one was at 90, the last one I just used was at 70, this one is at 50. You never want to use just a true black because then it would just be a black. Use black cardstock at that point. So to be able to have shading, you want to make sure that you're using your different values. So went through there, got the cat done, the face and the ears. Now I'm just adding some rosiness to the cheeks, and it's actually Deco Pink that I used. I'll actually show you that in a minute because I realize I forget. And now I've grabbed 2 shades of purple for the little cat's hat, and I'm just putting in those shade marks there. I like to start, that's Violet Dark. There's the Deco Pink. Yep. And then I like to go in, once I have my dark down, I real quick go in with my next darkest, and then I come in with my lightest. That's all over. And then I build from there. I know some people start with the lightest, then go to the darkest, then to the mid-tone. Whatever works for you. This is Spring Green that I'm using for the band on the hat, and just putting that down on the bottom. And this is, I never say this word right, so forgive me, Chartreuse. Yeah, that's wrong. It's a light pale green. So I'm going to grab that die base again. So I've cut this out on a piece of scrap. And what I want to do is, I wanted to cut the cat out, but you can't see through the die. So I use this piece of scrap, I die cut it out. I'm now going to place it over the piece and then set the die in. The die will actually lock into place where that cutout is. So you can see now I have a perfect cutout of the cat that I just spent all that time coloring. So if you weren't aware of that, there's a little trick for you so that you can get them cut out when you have solid dies. I know my favorite things, I think, is sometimes like that as well with their dies. They're solid. But that's the nice way that you can get it to be perfectly lined up. I wanted to pull out my sticker machine. I haven't used this thing in ages. So to do that, you just put that in the top like I showed, pull it through until it passes, and then just cut it along the serrated edge. I like to take a tool around the edges just to make sure that the glue is stuck on there and doesn't come off. And then you just peel off your backing. And now you've got a completely adhered piece onto your project. I'm using that Moonlit Sparkle glitter pen, and the color that I'm using here is Rose Quartz for the nose. Just adds a little bit of sparkle. These are 2 of the 3 Copics that I own, and I'm using the C3 and the C1. They're both cool grays so that I can create a shadow below the little cat so that it doesn't look like he's floating or she's floating. Sometimes I forget to do that. But it's, really, it's not something that we think about. So, going to create my sentiment, and I chose the "You Are Creepy Cute," and we're going to emboss that with white. I use Recollections Snow, and it is a fine detail embossing powder. And we're going to heat set that. And then I'm going to use one of the Lawn Fawn banner dies. It's a quick way for me to just get a straight edge. Whether I keep the fishtails or not, I always have that option. As you can see, when I'm filming these, I'm actually creating the cards. I don't create one first and then film. You're actually kind of seeing, I call it my process. Some of you may think it's an annoying process, but you can actually see how your thoughts and your ideas can change as you're making a card. So I've adhered that down and propped it up onto some foam tape. I'm going to use some of those googly eyes that were in the kit, and I'm going to put them onto the spider. They say they're adhesive, but they were sticky back. I couldn't get it off, so I'm just gluing it. So they probably should pop off at some point, not quite sure. But we just use the glue to adhere those down and set them in place. And it really does make him look, or her, really cute. And then, of course, we have to pick that up and wiggle it just to see them move all over the place. For the card base, I chose the orange. And since I did use the Lawn Fawn large sticks rectangle, it will cover the entire base completely. So set that. Again, I'm using my Nuvo crystal drops. I did not use any of the jewel drops throughout this kit. So I'm using the pumpkin orange. That one is the apple green. And then the purple that I'm pulling in is the crushed grape. 3 perfect colors for Halloween. And that is card number 8. Card number 9. Wow. That's all I can say on this. You guys will not believe. You can hear it probably in the background. We had all kinds of fun with this one. So we are going to create another shaker card. So I've used my wonky stitch die for both of those panels there. Used my larger size of the Spellbinders cut edge die and put it onto an angle. We're going to adhere the acetate to the inside of this panel. And then just trim it. I didn't trim it quite correctly. So just moving some of the edges. Now, There, that's 2 layers of foam tape, which is what we normally do. I am using every one of these sentiment stickers. So these are all going on to the black cardstock. Have to trim them in case other colors there, and then I cut around them so they each will have a black border. You can see that I'm setting it in. Now, there's a reason why we have the 6x6 doodle pad, and I lost this footage. This is one of the reasons why we are very delayed in our recording. So, had it all together, that's why you're seeing a lot of thumbs up here, but with only 2 layers of foam, when I put the beads in, everything stuck. It wasn't shaking, it wasn't moving, so I literally had to tear it all apart. I was able to save it very slowly, very gingerly. This was all on tape. It's not anymore. So we went to a 3rd level of foam tape for this, and I was able to put everything back there. The sentiments do move. I attached it to a purple card base at 4 1/4 at 5 1/2. That was the card that created me headaches, people. But that is card 9. You can hear it as I'm moving it. Card 10 is my favorite. I am using this foil piece from Tim Holtz. And when they say it's foil, it is foil. It is a very thick, best way to describe it, a thick version of aluminum foil. So you really need to be careful. I'm going to do the impressions with this. So I've created 4 impressions. You have to be very careful with this. I actually cut myself. Major paper cut when it comes to working with this piece. So I am slowly, this is sped up. This is not normal time. I actually was going so slow that when I doubled the speed of the video, it looks like I'm moving naturally. But move very carefully because it can tear easily. And even though I did the impression with the squishy pad and the layers, it still did cut through in some areas. Okay, I did use my favorite things, wonky stitch die around the outside, and I set that right on to the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base, and it is white. I'm using the sentiment, it's Meowloween. What I want to do, I heat set that, use my white snow recollections. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in that template again. And I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to put my die over that, and I'm going to cut my cat. So the sentiment is now sitting along the cat. And then that'll be placed there. What I'm also going to do is make the cat puffy. So I know we've seen other people. I know Black Sheep 303 did this. I know the Frugal Crafter has done this. And I think Vicky, can't say her last name, but she's awesome. She did this recently as well. So it just gives it some curve because you're breaking those fibers. I added a little bit of foam tape and glue to the foam tape because, again, this does have a curve. So I just wanted to make sure, and plus I'm going on foil. So I just wanted to make sure it stuck. That is my favorite, and that's card 10. These are the supplies that I have left. I have all of these stickers. I have some of the puffy stickers left. Only used a couple times the Tim Holtz cardstock, the stamp set, of course. My sister will probably steal those candy bags. Those are the scraps of the cardstock that I have left, the brads. Didn't use the sequins. I've got plenty of googly eyes, the die, some of the threads, and then, of course, the Nouveau drops. And here, of course, is what I call the showcase of all the cards. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button while you're there, just so that you can stay up to date. As I said, this will be a busy week for me when it comes to releasing some videos. I do apologize for that. I like to post at least 2 a week. Stay tuned for more. There will be so much more information down in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, be creative, everyone.